Warning. The program you are about to listen to is not our usual pulp sci-fi fantasy fun. Tonight we discuss horror, extreme horror, with author Kristopher Triana. If you have an aversion to blood, guts, convenience store Satanism, evil high school girls, demons, detention, crappy jobs, or sex with headless bodies, you may want to skip this one. Welcome to the Writer's Room.
Yes, welcome to the Writer's Room, everyone. And thank you, spooky narrator man, for that wonderful introduction. And yes, our guest this evening is Kristopher Triana. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Glad to be here. And I'm glad that there's a trigger warning for whenever I am on the mic.
You know what? No, it's just usually we interview pulp sci-fi writers or fantasy. So this is a little off our usual wheelhouse. So I just wanted to make sure the audience knew when we started talking about body art.
Right.
That it's not the usual fare.
But yeah, do not feel like you have to constrain yourself. Say whatever the hell you want.
Yes, we don't care. It's not, and we're not monetized, so don't have to worry about that pesky demonetization with YouTube.
So no topic is out of bounds.
Yes.
All right. Good to know. I can say poopy.
Yeah.
Exactly. The George Carlin words you can't say, go ahead and do it. It's all good.
Shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
Exactly. We say tits here all the time.
Yes.
Those are actually the George Carlin ones, all in order. I actually just know that from memory. It's true. I'm a big Carlin fan. So.
Carlin was the best.
Voice of our time.
Yes.
Well, so anyway, I guess just to start this off, being a child of the 80s myself, there was a time when if you said horror, people immediately thought you meant movies about a guy with a machete and a hockey mask.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten a little bit better now, but still, most people really don't know what horror is. So what is extreme horror, and how is it different than the rest?
Well, extreme horror is horror without limits. A lot of what you would call conventional horror has certain things that they consider taboo that they won't go into. It's extreme horror doesn't have any taboos. It just completely goes for it. So you can be as gross or as filthy or as demented as you want to be.
Well, that actually is what attracted me to your book, Body Art, was that it was a time, I guess it's still kind of the case, but, it seemed like horror was starting to get watered down. My favorite horror show, Pseudopod, was using trigger warnings. They were kind of taming it down. And the name itself, horror, is a warning. You don't really need to warn someone.
Yeah.
And then I saw your book and it's like, okay, this guy is not going to hold back. And I got to say, I was not expecting where body horror would go. It did not disappoint.
Body art?
Body art, not body horror. Body art, yeah, which was full of body horror. But the other piece that we read, and it shows that you had range, was From Storm's a Daughter.
Yes. I loved that story.
Oh, thank you.
I personally love weird westerns, any westerns with supernatural elements. So this one really spoke to me. So
From the Storms? Because that one's not really a western.
Oh, okay. You know what? I got the wrong title then. It was 2 years ago we read.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
it's the one about the cowboy who goes to his favorite bordella or brothel during a storm.
The Bone Orchard.
Bone Orchard,
yes.
Okay, that is the one you read, yes.
Yeah, those stories are both in the same book, so I could see how you could get it mixed up.
And we actually reviewed that years ago.
I appreciate that.
But yeah, that definitely wasn't extreme horror by any means. It was more
No, that whole book doesn't really have any extreme horror in it. Growing Dark, that was my first book release, and it's mostly conventional horror with a few kind of like dramatic stories in there. So yeah, it's not a splatter book like Body Art is.
So, the thing is, though, I've read stuff where it was just splatter and gross for gross sake.
Right.
And it doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't really get a reaction. Really, the thing is, and just for the audience so they know what Body Art is about, do you want to read the introduction?
Sure. As an undertaker, the human body is Harold's canvas. For Rutger and Candy, famous adult stars from the 80s, flesh is also their preferred medium of art. When Harold's ex-lover started arriving in body bags, the undertaker believes he's receiving a message to create a new masterpiece. Rutger and Candy are also on a mission. Their new task is to create the most shocking movie imaginable and solidify their place in film history. Toby and Jessica are recent high school graduates, but looking for some fun. Unfortunately, their cabin vacation has landed them in the wrong place at the wrong time. All the while, a mysterious red dust surrounds the unique individuals, drawing their worlds together in a bizarre and horrifying way. Art can be dangerous, and body arts is the deadliest of all.
And the curious thing about the story that grabbed me is it wasn't immediately like gore in your face or anything like that. I mean, you start with these three different plots. You've got the undertaker, who's pretty much a shut-in and something's wrong with him. You've got Candy and Rutger, who are obviously two people who are washed up and trying to get that one last score to make money and feel like they're important and still have a place in the world. And then you've got these two young people that have just gotten out of high school. They've got their future ahead of them. And Candy's insane. Or not Candy, Jessica's insane.
Yeah.
Jessica's absolutely insane. And just where it goes.
Yeah. It's it just escalates and escalates, that story, when it comes to the splatter and the gore. That's definitely one of the most splattery things I've ever written. Definitely the most perverted, I think. I would think. But I mean, it's about people making the most extreme, insane porno ever made, so it kind of has to be. I always allow the story to tell me what degree of splatter or extremity it requires. I certainly have books that aren't extreme and aren't splatter, but body art is both.
So I guess just as a couple questions then, a couple themes that I notice in your work. Redheads.
Yeah.
Insane high school girls. And kind of high school themes in general, such as, which one was it? Detained. The Detained.
Oh, yeah, The Detained, yeah. That's a high school reunion that is not what it appears to be, yeah.
So why is this something you keep coming back to?
I don't know. It's definitely, I mean, you definitely are right that like Full Brutal and The Detained does have to do with high school. In body art, two of the characters have just graduated high school, but other than that, it doesn't have anything to do with high school at all. And that's only two of the characters.
Yeah.
But no, I have written some stories that have teenage characters in it, so yeah, there'll be that element to it. Detained was like I said, a high school reunion thing, so it's everybody in it. All the characters are in their 40s, and they think they're getting back together for a high school reunion, but it turns out to be something else. And it's kind of a trap.
You're trying to do Slaughter High but good.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I kind of like Slaughter High too. So.
Well, it's a fun film, but it's not a good film.
No, I wouldn't. It's not exactly like True Grit or something, but it's a good movie. I enjoyed it. But no, I mean, I would say the majority of my work actually doesn't involve high school, but there have been those stories, like Full Brutal. I wanted to write a book about a teenage maniac, so that certainly high school plays a big part in that book, but otherwise not so much.
Okay, just kind of just recurring themes. The other thing I was going to ask is that in body art, you thank Lindsay Lohan for inspiration.
Yes.
You kind of expand on that.
Yeah, well, Jessica is described twice in the book as looking like a doppelganger for Lindsay Lohan. And so I thanked her in the back of the book as kind of like a nod to that. But I always kind of, I appreciate women who I love when there's these women who start as in entertainment as these like cute girls in these Disney things. They're all like, you know, family friendly, like her and Miley Cyrus and like people like that. And then when they grow up, they're just completely out of control, like maniacs. And that seems to be a thing a lot with child stars in general, that they end up, you know, yeah, because it can't be easy, you know, being a movie star when you're, you know, before you hit puberty. I mean, that's like your brain isn't fully developed yet. Like it's got to warp you. But I find it kind of fun and entertaining when it's someone who not only was a child star, but was like Disney and like really like sweet and, you know, like that kind of child star. And then, you know, like now Lindsay Lohan makes movies like Machete and stuff. And I love that transition. You know, I don't necessarily love seeing them get addicted to drugs and have bad things happen to them, but I love when they start making like grindhouse movies after being, you know, Miss Sugar and Spice when they were little. I enjoy that.
So would Thora Birch count in that category then?
Yeah, I would say she does. Yeah.
Although I think her story, she came out of that considerably better than most.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Cruiser Bulk.
Yeah, they did. I mean, I do like the Fruza Bulk thing kind of works too, though, because she was, you know, did like, you know, like some Disney stuff and everything when she was younger. Return to Oz, but Return to Oz was kind of dark.
It's horrifying.
Yeah, it's kind of dark. So she always was kind of doing kind of dark stuff, but then she got kind of typecast as that. But she's great. She's great. But yeah, but I just like it when again, you know, I don't like seeing them like, you know, completely fall apart, and that's tragic. Like, you know, every single kid on Different Strokes, you know, that's tragic.
Mm-hmm.
But Lindsay Lohan making Machete and crazy shit like that's awesome. I love that progression. So
okay, so a couple questions. First off, there's a story about your grandmother apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And your introduction to horror.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't credit her solely with introducing me to horror, but we had a special bond in that we both really loved horror movies and stuff. And we were the only people in the family who did. You know, like my mom was terrified. Like she couldn't watch anything with a drop of blood in it. You know, like she just couldn't handle it. And my dad thought horror was just stupid and immature. But my grandmother really loved it. And she and I used to watch horror movies together all the time, and you know, like really intense stuff too. Like we went to see Seven together. You know.
Oh wow.
Yeah. You know, and like for her birthday, I took her to see Freddy versus Jason, and you know, like we always enjoyed scary movies, and everyone else. It wasn't just my parents, but you know, like my aunts, uncles, my sister. Like none of them were into it, but we wanted to watch every horror movie that came out. You know, we both were into horror books and everything. So, yeah, we had a very special bond.
What was her favorite?
Well, she wasn't the type of horror fan like I am, where I have like framed posters in my house of these movies. She wasn't like that hardcore. She just enjoyed them. But I mean, she did love the movie Basket Case.
Really?
She thought it was just absolutely hilarious. She thought it was so funny. So they're not necessarily her favorite horror movie because it was, you know, scary, but she thought it was absolutely hilarious. So I always remember that because it's just such a funny thing for her to have chosen.
Oh wow, that's not one I've heard many people say that they enjoyed, let alone was their favorite. So that's interesting.
Basket Case is great. I've got them all. I've got the whole collection. Frank Henenlotter is really a comic genius when it comes to horror comedy.
Didn't he direct The Stuff?
No,
okay,
that's Larry Cohen.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Henenlotter gave us Frankenhooker. And
okay.
Yeah, Brain Damage and Bad Biology. Yeah, he's given us some great stuff. But Basket Case was his big premiere. Yeah. And I love that movie, and I think it's a great movie.
That's great.
Okay, so let's get into your horror comedy. This actually is going to be my next read. I was so impressed with the concept and the preview on Audible.
Oh, you want me to read it?
Yeah, read it.
Okay.
You're better than me at this.
Okay. The Night Stalkers. The employees of the Freshway grocery store aren't too happy about having to do an overnight shift, but they're about to be even unhappier. Their rival store, Devil's Foods, is about to lay siege upon them with extreme prejudice. This is no ordinary grocery chain. Devil's Foods is run by a cult of murderous Satanists committed to killing their competition, literally. And then Ishii likens it to Clerks meets Assault on Precinct 13, but with Satanists.
Yeah, that's a good analogy there. Good comparison. Yeah, that's a fun one. I co-wrote with Ryan Harding. He's the co-author on that one, and he and I, are both known for writing some gruesome stuff. Him especially, and we'd become friends, and we had been talking about potentially doing something together, and bounced off a couple of different ideas, and eventually I said to him, I was like, I've had this idea about doing a horror novel in a grocery store, just for fun, because I had spent many years working in grocery stores, and it turned out that Ryan had worked briefly in a grocery store as well. And we're like, okay, well, we got to do this then. But we knew it wasn't going to be anything too serious. We just wanted to have fun writing it together. So we just, we're basically trying to outdo each other with gore and craziness. Each time, I would write something and send it back to him. I'd be like, check this out, and then he would kind of come back with something even more disgusting or weird or deranged. And it's just kind of like, just kids flicking boogers at each other. That's really what we were like.
So, what point does the gore get to the point where it's like some of the Tokyo Shock films where it's not even gore anymore; it's just funny.
Yeah. I think it's all how it's presented, because you could have excessive gore and have it be really, really upsetting and disturbing. Like if you talking about movies, even if you take the ending of Maniac, it's extremely gory, but it's not funny. At least it's not to me. It's just very disturbing and unsettling. But then you take a movie like Evil Dead 2, and gore, blood is shooting into the guy's face out of the wall like a hydrant, just gallons and gallons of gore. It's so preposterous and funny, So it's really how it's presented. I don't think there's necessarily a certain line, okay, there's a certain amount and then it's funny. It's really how it's presented, I think.
So another one I wanted to ask you is, and this is one that I think a lot of people would think of, is where does this come from?
Night Stalkers or
no. Just writing this sort of material. I mean, it really is. It's a niche audience. Only certain people are going to want to experience it, and it is by its very definition, it's extreme horror. You're taking something that's already an extreme. I think one of the attractions to horror is that you're seeing people go through the crucible. You're seeing the most extreme situations. It's like war movies. So in that case, going extreme horror, where does this come from?
Well, that's kind of like a two-part answer, I guess. Horror, if it's really horror, will always have that element of fear and fright. But there's a lot of very safe horror out there, where you're not going to get something that touches on human trauma, and you're not going to get any stories that contain any sexual assault or anything like cannibalism or anything extreme like that. It's really like, oh, there's a ghost in my house, ooh, it's like that, so that there are different levels to horror, definitely, and you can have some horror that's absolutely that is not nearly extreme. It can be very scary and very good. Like Stephen King's books aren't extreme horror, but they're very good, and they're great stories. But then you get to someone like Clive Barker, and it's a little more, at least his older stuff, it's a little more visceral. And then you go on to, like, you know, someone like Edward Lee, and the carnage is completely out of control and vile. And that's, you know, that's, you can say, for a niche audience. But when it comes to extreme horror or splatter being a niche audience, I don't think that's as true as it once was. I think that there's been a big resurgence in the splatterpunks in recent years, including not just the writers, but the readers. And, you know, like I'll write crime fiction, and I love writing crime fiction, but it doesn't sell nearly as well as the books that I write about cannibal cheerleaders, you know? It just doesn't. So the audience is definitely out there, for sure. And as for where it comes from, I don't know. I've always been attracted to scary things. Even as a kid, you know, Halloween was my favorite holiday. I played with my monster toys more than any of my other, you know, G.I. Joe or any of that shit. I've always loved horror, always loved the dark side of things. And as far as extreme goes, I don't know where it comes from, why I lean towards that as often as I have. But I do always want my horror to be true to the word horror. I want my stuff to terrify people. And sometimes I think, you know, I go into these taboo places because that's more frightening and that's more disturbing.
In my own case, I spent, I guess, the first 30 of my years of my life with almost zero interest in the genre, actively avoiding it to some degree. I mean, other than maybe Alien and The Thing, I really hadn't seen much in the way of horror. Maybe in part to my uncle forcing me to watch Poltergeist at age 9, but maybe other things as well.
Right.
But dealing with I'm not going to get into why. I have my own dealings with post-traumatic stress. When I was going through the worst of it, I found myself exposing myself to as much horror as possible. And either it didn't affect me at all or it did. And something about that catharsis and seeing these people go through the crucible of these experiences and who survived, who didn't, did their humanity still come through? That always kind of stuck with me. I think that was for some reason that was what was driving it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely part of it. I think you can get a lot of catharsis out of horror. I think people can also just get a thrill out of it, kind of like the same thrill you get on a carnival ride where you're terrified, but you're enjoying every second of it, you know. But I definitely think that there's a lot of therapy in reading horror, and definitely for me, there's a lot of therapy in writing horror. You know, I write some extreme dark stuff, but I have some extreme dark stuff in my head, I guess, you know. So it helps me work through things. And even though I haven't experienced, you know, a lot of the things that are in my books, they definitely are fiction. The pain and the trauma that leads me to write certain things definitely comes from a real place. Like my book Gone to See the Riverman, a lot of people have responded to that because it's so disturbing and so dark and everything. And that book was the first book that I wrote after my divorce, which was very painful for me. And so even though the book has nothing to do with divorce and has nothing to do with my personal life, a lot of that agony was kind of like exhaled into that book. And I think that's one of the reasons people maybe not identify with it. It's too dark of a story for me to assume anyone identifies, but connect to it in a way.
Bar One Studio says the horror in horror doesn't come from any amount of gore, but in the helplessness, the disempowerment of any character witnessing the horror. Things are out of control.
Yeah, well, I guess there's some truth in that. I think you can have a good horror story without the main character being completely powerless. But I get what you're saying in that you know, the character can't control the horror around them, that they're trying to escape it or defeat it or something.
The Walk Through Hell.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, one of the ones that always stood out to me as the first Phantasm film is
Yeah.
obviously about a boy dealing with loss.
Yes. Hmm.
And that is the overarching theme. That is really what it's about.
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's definitely, it's pretty clear that that's the metaphor there, you know. Same thing with like the Babadook. I mean, it's that's what it's about. It's about grief, and it's about that mother's grief. There's no real like monster Babadook. It's a metaphor. Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's one of the ways that we can use horror for our therapy, is through things like that.
So, if you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
I had listened to another interview with you
Mhm.
a couple days ago. You had mentioned bipolar.
Mm.
Is that okay to mention, or should we just skip that?
No, we can talk about it.
How does that play into any of this, or does it?
I think it does. Yeah, I do. That's certainly been a big hurdle for me repeatedly in my life, dealing with that. And yeah, a lot of people that struggle with it, I've been known to be creative people. So I don't know if it's one of the reasons I have this irresistible urge to write like I do, but it could very possibly could be.
Okay, so I guess moving on, what's it like working with Bloodbound Books?
Great. I love working with Bloodbound Books. Mark and Joe are fantastic, and I've been working with them for many years.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Were they the first to publish you, or was that someone else?
No, they weren't. But they I'm trying to remember what year it was. They first published one of my short stories in a collection called DOA 2, and I think it was about 2014 or so, 2013, 2014, something like that. And I was really happy to be in that book because it was an anthology with a lot of other extreme horror authors, a lot of people that I really admire. Like there's a Jack Ketchum story in it, Reth James White, a lot of Monica O'Rourke. You know, so there's a lot of really good people in that. So I was like, yeah, you know, it was the first anthology I was in with a bunch of writers that I really respected. So that was really cool for me. And our relationship just developed from there. And now my most recent book that just came out is called Fine Evening in Hell. And that was through Bloodbound Books, and it's available now. You can get it hardback, paperback, ebook. So
What's that one about?
that one is more of a thriller. It's not extreme, it's not splattery, although there is some definitely some carnage and some intense moments in it. It's really more of a thriller, but it's about a woman who's just kind of caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. She ends up getting kidnapped, carjacked by these two criminals that are on the run, and they're like, look, you need to drive us across state lines, and what happens in the process is that she ends up having to work with them to get away from not only the people that are after these guys, but worse people that they come into contact with along the road. So the bad guys she initially is terrified of, she ends up having to team up with so they can all survive.
Very cool. What was, and because I don't think we touched upon it, what was the very first thing that you had published?
It was a short story, a crime short story called Giving from the Bottom. And it was published in an online magazine that is no longer around. And I was absolutely thrilled. And I made no money on it, but I mean, I did, but it was pennies, you know, but I was so happy just to have something published. And that story is also in Growing Dark, the short story collection we mentioned earlier.
So you said that there's actually kind of a growing interest in this kind of horror again, which is kind of interesting considering when I came across your work, we were kind of spiraling into the whole cancel culture thing. Have you had any trouble with that, or is this kind of a reaction too that we're seeing?
Oh yeah, cancel culture. Well, I mean, that's a tricky thing to talk about because if you criticize it, you get canceled.
Oh, we do it all the time here. So
yeah, so don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
Well, yeah, it's a tricky thing. I mean, some people certainly deserve to be canceled. Like Bill Cosby definitely deserves it. But I haven't been canceled because I haven't done anything terrible. Not at least not that I can think of. That's all that is bad enough to be canceled as a writer. But there's definitely issues that you run into with trigger warnings. Where you want to be able to have your story be intense and shocking and everything, and some publishers or some readers will be hey, trigger warning, and I get that. I get it. Like, I get why. I'm not trying to argue against it, but I don't like it when it completely spoils when they completely spoil a huge plot point in the process of trying to give a trigger warning. That bothers me.
I don't know. I again would have to say, if it's called extreme horror, there is your trigger warning.
Right.
I mean, if you can't really deal with, if you need a trigger warning, I don't think you're really mature enough or old enough to be reading the book.
No.
Is my opinion.
Right, but a lot of people argue that that they love extreme horror, but then there's a certain thing that triggers them, like rape or something. A lot of people could want to read an extreme horror story that's full of blood and guts and carnage, but they're sensitive to sexual assault, and so they would want to know that that's going to happen in the book. And I get that, but again, I totally see what you're saying too, that if it's extreme horror, you have to kind of know that you're getting into just that anything goes.
Well, if you ask, if the person is asking you to tell them, okay, well, this is what's awaiting you, it's kind of like telling the monster to take his mask off, just to let you know it isn't real.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, I understand why some people want them, but I don't like them when it gives away a certain, gives away something that could be a huge, like, holy shit moment in the book that you're saving up, and you work hard as a writer to create this story and this tension, and you don't know if something's going to happen or not as the reader. But then if you open the first page of the book and it tells you, it spoils everything. So it's something that's very much debated, and I don't really want to make one stand or another on it because it's sensitive and people get sensitive. So,
well, I can offend people for you, so
feel free.
Yeah, I can be the offensive one.
Feel free. Yeah.
I do agree with you on that. I mean, there's one thing to warn people, hey, this does have certain content in it, but at the same time, we all hate it when the trailer spoils the end of a film. So
right. Well, see, that's like, I don't even watch movie trailers because I hate spoilers that much. And so, yeah, I don't like it when there's a content warning, like in the beginning of a movie or a TV show. Like, it bothers me because it's like, oh, okay, now I know there's going to be all these things are going to happen, But I understand if some people are sensitive and things like that. But I also don't think, I probably shouldn't say this, but I also think that, like, there's certain things that trigger me, that upset me, that I have past traumas, but I don't try to avoid those things. And this is just my personal take, so I hope no one gets mad. This is just me. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I feel like if I go through my life trying to avoid that at all costs, then that has conquered me, and that has made me forever afraid of it. I'm not saying I go out and try to experience it, but I don't deliberately just do everything I can to avoid it in any kind of entertainment, whether it be serious or comedy or a version of it. It's like I don't want it to own me that way.
I would even go a step further for myself, because I've gotten into I've dealt with some real serious, legit post-traumatic stress. We're talking about the well, I won't get into it, but yeah, just the making life unlivable kind. But I had come to the conclusion that to demand everyone change for me was kind of ridiculous, that I had the problem, not everyone else, and that reality was going to always be there no matter whether I liked it or not. And I think that we're protecting people way, way too much right now. But that's my opinion. So Okay, so you haven't really dealt with a lot of pushback other than publishers asking for you to add
Well,
trigger
no,
warnings.
I didn't say that. I
Oh,
said
okay. Sorry.
publishers, and reviewers. People that are professional reviewers or Goodreads reviewers and stuff. They talk about it a lot. Publishers either bend to that pressure or they don't. But I haven't really experienced too much blowback. But what's funny is sometimes I've gotten it for stories that I wouldn't have expected. Whereas then there's other books that I'm like, oh man, I'm going to get crucified for writing this. And the people that read it just love it. And those are the extreme horror people, and other people, I guess, that are more sensitive don't end up reading it. I don't know. It's like I have a book called And the Devil Cried, and I am amazed that people haven't tried to kill me for writing it. Because it's just the main character is absolutely vile, but he's supposed to be. You're not supposed to root for him. He's supposed to be the bad guy.
Oh, I read that review on Amazon where the person just lists everything that's wrong with this character. It's like, it's kind of an endorsement, really.
Yeah, if that's the kind of thing you want to read, yeah, absolutely. But no, it's not supposed to be. He's the main character, but he's not what you would call the protagonist. He's awful. He's a villain, But a lot of great books have characters that are utterly loathsome, like, and some of them are classics, like Lolita by Nabokov. I mean, Humbert Humbert's a wretch of a human being, and it's written from his perspective and everything, and it's written so romantically. It's fucked up, but that's a fantastic book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. And it's like, no, I don't like him. I don't relate to him. You don't have to. That's something that I definitely stand against, is the concept that you have to be able to like someone, to like the characters, to enjoy a story, that you have to have someone to root for. I don't agree with that at all. I can totally enjoy a book where the characters are awful and I hate them, or they're total wretches. It's what happens in the story that makes it a good or bad story. I don't need to see myself in the character. I think there's a level of vanity in that, in wanting to see yourself in the character when you read it. And I see Spencer is saying it's incredible. And I'm happy he thinks so, because he's doing the audiobook.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, so you're the one doing the reading, Spencer. You're good.
He is. He's very good. He did the audiobook for Toxic Love and Night Stalkers, and now he's doing And the Devil Cried.
So how is it working with a reader for doing audiobooks? Because I know that's a realm that not a lot of people have experience with.
Yeah, but it's great. When you get the right person. Spencer has been fantastic. He really gives a great performance, because you can write the best book in the world, but if you have a bad producer, a bad narrator on your audiobook, it's unlistenable. I remember, I can't really get into audiobooks personally. I tend to zone out, but I've tried going on long road trips, and sometimes I've been able to enjoy some of them, and other ones I couldn't, but then went back and read the book, and the book was great. It was just the reader. Like, I had one, was reading a Daniel Woodrell book, and he's excellent. And the narrator sounded like a GPS, it sounded that robotic, and I couldn't even do it. But no, I've loved working with Spencer, because he really puts life into the characters, and really, he really has a comical way about him too. Like when he did Night Stalkers, he was really funny with the different voices that he did. Ryan and I both loved it. I've also worked with several other readers that have been great. Danny George, I've worked with several times. She read Full Brutal and Riverman, because I needed to have a female voice read those books, because of the main characters are female and everything. So I definitely wanted a woman to do the voice, and she was fantastic too. So no, it's a great experience when you get the right person.
Well, I would have to say she did a great job with Full Brutal, because she definitely nailed that high school mean girl voice that you just want to hit.
Yeah, she was great. Yeah,
Very despicable, you know.
Nice.
She really nailed it. She was able to do all the different voices so well, and she really, and because that book is written from the point of view of Kim, the teenage maniac, she really just nailed it. You know, when I heard her audition for it, I was like, wow, I want this person. You know, I definitely want her.
So other than working in supermarkets and menial jobs, where else have you drawn inspiration? Because I notice you've also got at least 2 characters who work on dead bodies or work around corpses.
Yeah, I haven't done that, but
okay. I was hoping you did.
No, I haven't. But yeah, I've definitely written about that with the crime scene cleanup with Toxic Love and the Undertaker with body art. But you know, those are just professions that you know, revolve around death, and so naturally they lend themselves well to horror stories.
Did you research much on those?
Yeah, particularly the crime scene cleanup with Toxic Love. I researched it at length, and I even debated taking the job, at least for a while, just to write the book. But the job is so fucking demanding. It's unbelievable. Like, you're basically just on call, you know, because you can't, like, crimes aren't committed on a schedule, you know?
No.
So it's like 3 a.m, you get called. It's like, hey, there's all this blood and feces that needs to be cleaned up in this apartment. And you have to go. Otherwise, like, you know, you're not getting paid, you know? So it's like one of those on-demand jobs, and I can't do that. I'm too old.
I can understand those hours, yeah.
But it is interesting that you were debating it. I mean, I know for me, I'd definitely be interested kind of doing a ride along for like 48 hours to see what the job's like. So
yeah. I mean, I don't think it would be. I mean, I say I don't think, you know, but because I'm not sure. You can think all you want, but until you're in the situation, you don't know. But I don't think I would have that big of a problem cleaning up the blood or anything. I think I'd have more of a problem having to get up in the middle of the night and go do it. You know, if I could like prepare myself mentally and be like, okay, it's 9 a.m. I got to go clean up some blood. It's fine. You know, I'm not really squeamish. But you know, those jobs are actually supposed to really mess you up. It's not just like, oh, there's a blood stain. You're cleaning up. It could be bodies that have been, you know, someone died in the apartment and they were shut in and no one knew about it for a long time. And so you're like, you have to peel up the carpet and scrub out all of like the decayed flesh and everything. And a lot of times you're seeing like big pieces of bodies, not just blood. You're just seeing mutilated people, you know. And so it's a job that comes with some psychological scarring from what I've researched. So,
bet you. I don't know if it would be on the same level as like being a surgeon, where like you're able to parcel it off.
Wouldn't.
No.
That's different. I mean,
yeah.
They kind of have a body mechanic look at it.
Mhm.
It's mechanical to them. I mean, you're not seeing shit blown all over the
No.
place.
Right. And then, I mean, with the crime scene cleanup, like you know that these people died horribly. With surgery, you're like trying to help someone and everything. But like when you get to the cleanup, see these scenes, it's like, oh, these two, I'm cleaning up the remains of these 2 children that were killed by their drunken father, you know?
Oh, geez.
So,
Yeah.
Did you
I mean, that's the
interview
reality.
anybody who does do that job?
I read interviews with them. I read a lot of interviews, and you know, to research the job, and you know, the character goes through, and then later I actually, unfortunately, it was after I wrote the book, but I did meet someone who actually did that for a living, and I talked to him for a while about it. So, yeah.
Well, as a great segue into that, I know this one here that I sit next to does all sorts of interesting research for his books. What's the most interesting or unusual thing you have researched for your books?
Wow. I mean, I guess some of the stuff that I researched for body art was kind of kind of out there because, you know, I wanted, like, the characters' motivations in this is to just create the most shocking pornography imaginable. So I researched some of the weirdest like sex fetishes that there are. Like, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think it's pronounced epetmophilia, but it's an actual fetish that people can only have an orgasm if they're having something amputated from their body.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, I'm going to be
Okay.
upfront. I thought that was the most shocking thing in the entire book.
It's
And
true.
that
It's true.
The other stuff, because the other stuff, it was shocking, but that part, it was the psychological aspect of it even
Right.
existing
Yeah.
and realizing it did.
No, it's the fact that there enough people have got off that way that they came up with a name for it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, it's not just you're a freak.
Right. No, it's a condition. Yeah. Yeah. As soon as I read about that, I was like, that's going in the book. Yeah, that's going in there for sure.
Is it an offshoot of that weird condition where you think that a body part doesn't belong to you and you want to amputate it? Is it an offshoot of that?
Yeah, maybe in some cases, but this is just a sexual thing, you know, like the people who do it. It's not like it's, at least from what I read, you know, it's not that it's just like one body part that they want to get rid of. It's that that's the only way they can get sexually excited. So it's like one finger here or one finger there or whatever, you know.
I think you run out real quickly of
yeah, I think you would. Yeah. So that was pretty crazy to research. And I've done a lot of research on prison life for a couple of different books that I've written, and particularly the one I'm working on now has a lot to do with prison. So that's been really crazy and interesting. A lot of stuff that, like, a lot of misconceptions that people have about prison and how it works, and like reading not just about what it's like for the prisoners, but what it's like for the COs, the correctional officers, and like how correctional officers have higher levels of PTSD than soldiers, or at least reported. Like more prison guards report like psychological trauma from their job than fucking soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan and stuff. Yeah, it's
everyone hates you.
Yeah. It's really interesting, you know, to go through and you know, read these articles and watch documentaries about it, and learn like some of the weird things that prisoners do, like what they use as currency and stuff like that. You know, like clean urine is currency, you know, and stuff like that. So that's been interesting too. Yeah, like, you know, like you know, to pass their drug tests and stuff. Like, it's actually a form of currency, you know, in prison. So.
Are you looking at you know, mid-max, max, you know, like
why do you know this?
Because I research this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, all levels. It just depends. You know, like for And the Devil Cried, he was in level 6, a maximum security prison. So, you know, I researched, you know, some of the more extreme places. And then, you know, I researched, you know, the segregation units as well, and you know, what that's like, because, you know, they have these supermax prisons now that are nothing but solitary confinement.
Yeah.
And so that's fucking bananas. And also, you know, in the story that I'm writing now, a lot of it, it's about a male CO working at a women's prison, and women's prisons are much different. As far as like I mean, there's not the same level of violence as you would get in a men's prison, but they're still in there for a reason, you know. So it's still a dangerous place. It's not like Orange is the New Black. It's not like that at all.
No.
So, yeah.
No, it is not. No, I was just curious if like you'd done anything, like gotten the prison ramen books and made some of the recipes.
No, I haven't bothered making the recipes. I'm not much of a cook. but no, I've mostly been going over like the protocol in writing about this CO, because this is the first time I've been writing about a CO. The other books were just people that had been in prison. There are a few prison flashbacks, but this book has a lot to do with prison. So, I'm reading about like what the private prisons do as compared to the public prisons when it comes to like their training academies. And so that, because like I'm starting with the guy becoming a CO and going into it. So I'm learning about that whole process.
That's fascinating. Is this going to be another horror, or is it more of a true crime?
Well, it's horror, but it's not supernatural horror. So it's like a true to life kind of horror story.
Scarier, honestly.
So you write things aside from horror. You said you do crime stories?
I do. I have crime fiction that I've written. Absolutely. Some of my books, like like all of my books will have some intensity and have violence in them. But a book like The Ruined Season or Shepherd or the Black Sheep, like these aren't horror novels conventionally, even though they have extremely dark elements to them. They would be more classified as a thriller or a crime story.
Well, often the way I view it, for those kinds of stories, what makes it horror is the lens you show it through. I mean, there's a big difference between The Silence of the Lambs and, say, a procedural.
Right.
And it's just how you handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't write anything that's procedural. Like I don't, like there is some procedural stuff I'm going through writing about the CO, but like I don't write, when I write a crime story, it's not going to be like about the cops. It's always about the villains. It's always about the criminals. That's just the perspective that I go towards. And I guess that's just my dark side. And it's also, I think, my dislike for law enforcement and rules and regulations and bosses, so maybe that has something to do with it too. But I always like the stories I write, and in the crime fiction that I read too, I'm always more interested in like the Jim Thompson type of stuff, where it's like, like these people that are either hardened criminals, or even better yet, the people that get wrapped up in crime, people that were normal people like you or me, and all of a sudden find themselves stuck in this ridiculous, crazy crime situation. That's the kind of crime story that entertains me. I don't want to read about like two cops arguing over doing it by the book or not, or some shit. It's just not my thing.
Well, we've come to the final 10 minutes of the show. Now's the time we do the promotions. So,
okay.
So, contacts, links.
Yes. So where are the best places for people to find you?
Well, you can find me at KristopherTriana.com. And again, Christopher's with a K, so it's K-R-I-S. Triana, T-R-I-A-N-A. You can find me on all the social media, or at least the old school ones, like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. I'm on those. I don't have a relationship with TikTok. It's just okay. I don't want to bother learning another one. So you can find me on all those places. You can always reach out to me. I try to comment back to people. I'm not a big social media person, but I always try to read every fan letter that I get and try to write back. I really appreciate it. And you can get my books anywhere. Just go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and anywhere you can buy books.
And what would you say would be the best entry books to you?
Depends on what stuff you like. If you like more conventional, scary stuff, you can go with something like Shepherd of the Black Sheep or Growing Dark. If you want to get more dark and disturbing, you can get Gone to See the Riverman. That's actually my most popular book by far. People love that book. So that could be a good way to start. And then if you just want absolute, balls to the wall gore, you can get Body Art, you can get Night Stalkers, Full Brutal. So it just depends on what you like. I also have, a 500-page horror Western about werewolves, so it's called The 13th Coyote. Hey. So I write a variety of different things. Yeah.
Is that one a little less on the gore?
No, it's definitely gory.
Oh, okay.
But it's not comedy gore. It's rough. It's it's this Western epic that has to do with these lycanthropic characters who are trying to destroy the world, and they're absolutely barbaric, you know. And there's other people in the book that aren't werewolves that are barbaric too. So it's really kind of examines the brutality of the wild frontier on a higher level, because these are, you know, wolf men that are literally eating people, including women and children. So
Very cool.
All
oh
right.
yeah, it's fun.
Well, before we go, I'm going to promote tonight Tabula Rasa, my sci-fi body horror short story, available right now on Amazon for 99 cents.
Mhm.
And all the links that Kristopher mentioned are in the description, as well as a direct link to his Amazon profile.
Yes. Oh, I also wanted to say you can also check out my podcast.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's called Vital Social Issues and Stuff with Chris and John Wayne. I do it with author John Wayne Communali. He and I do the show, and we talk about horror, we talk about writing, we talk about all manner of things. And it's called Vital Social Issues and Stuff because that's how important the show is. So.
Vital social issues and stuff. I like that.
Yes.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much, Kristopher, for joining us this evening. This has been absolutely wonderful chatting with you.
Great chatting
And
with you too.
definitely, I know Wolf 10 is extremely excited about werewolves. So,
Yes.
so
Well, it kind of sounds up your alley too.
Yeah, if you like westerns,
yeah.
If you talk about doing research, I did an enormous amount of research for that. I don't just watch like a Clint Eastwood movie and write a western. Like I've read many western novels. It's a part of history that fascinates me. So I did extensive research writing that book. You know, so it's very authentic to the Wild West if werewolves were real.
Wonderful. If I may ask, what part of the West is this taking place in? Is this, Texas? Are we starting to get into, Nevada, Colorado?
No, it's well, it kind of spans a region, of the Colorado Territory,
Mhm.
but it's more, closer to Wyoming in for the majority of it. But there's actually a sequel coming out this year, and the majority of that one takes place in Nevada.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out.
And that one is all about female werewolves. So all the characters are, it's all the characters, good and bad. Not all, but the main ones, they're all female.
They're all bitches.
They're all bitches.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right. Well, thank
Very
you for
cool.
joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate the invite. It's been a blast.
No problem. Take care.
Wonderful. All right.
Thanks. Take care.
Good night, everyone.